Long ago, before the rule of the Olympians was secure, and long after the fall of the ancient primordial gods, there lived a lesser-known titan named Thalos. Unlike the famous titans like Kronos, Rhea, or Prometheus, Thalos's name was whispered only in obscure places, in the crumbling scrolls of forgotten temples, or in the wind that raced through the high mountain passes of Thessaly. He was not a god of thunder or sea or earth. He had no dominion. No temples were built in his honor. But Thalos possessed something rarer than brute strength or elemental command. He had a gift that terrified both titans and gods, the power of mimicry. Thalos could imitate any god's ability for a short period of time, simply by watching them perform it. He once watched Helios ride his chariot across the sky, and the next day, the sun rose twice, once by Helios, once by Thalos, causing floods and fear across the lands. When Poseidon struck his trident upon the sea and caused waves to crash, Thalos, hidden in the mist, mimicked the strike, and entire islands trembled. But these acts were rare and secret, for Thalos knew well that the gods would not suffer another upstart among them. They had only recently defeated the Titans in the Titanomachy, the great war that reshaped the cosmos. Zeus ruled the heavens. Poseidon ruled the seas. Hades held dominion over the underworld. The world was newly carved and fragile in its balance. Thalos wandered in silence, watching, learning, but nursing a bitter resentment. He had fought in the war too, standing with his fellow Titans. He had survived, not imprisoned in Tartarus like many others, but not welcomed among the gods either. Zeus ignored him. Athena called him a trickster. Hermes laughed behind his back. Even Hecate, who dealt in mystery and hidden power, warned others of Thalos's dangerous curiosity. So he hid, traveling through the cracks of the world, from the base of Mount Etna to the far isles of Crete. In these wanderings, Thalos learned more than just powers. He learned flaws. He saw how the gods bickered, how their pride often blinded them, how they distrusted one another even in peace. He saw how Hades stayed isolated, how Poseidon bristled at Zeus's commands, and how Hera, queen of the gods, secretly harbored resentment against her husband's infidelities. It was in this weakness Thalos saw his opportunity. He would not fight the gods directly. That was foolish. But he could make them fight themselves. So he began to move, subtly, slowly. One by one, he took their shapes. As Hermes, he spread false messages, whispering to Apollo that Artemis plotted to steal his lyre, and to Ares that Athena called him a brainless brute. As Athena, he told Hera that Zeus planned to name a mortal woman queen of Olympus. He impersonated Hephaestus and gave Poseidon a cursed trident head, claiming it would amplify his power. He even dared to take the form of Hades and wander through the mortal world, raising the dead briefly just to stir fear. Confusion reigned on Olympus. Fights broke out. Alliances were strained. Zeus thundered in rage, unsure who to trust. At first, no one suspected an outside force. It was only Hestia, goddess of the hearth and flame, the quietest, most overlooked Olympian, who sensed something amiss. She never left her post at the great hearth of Olympus, and it was she who noticed the flicker. A subtle difference in mannerism, a slight delay in speech, a shift in divine aura. Hestia had no thunderbolts or war chariots. She didn't command legions or monsters. But she was ancient, older than Zeus, and her flame saw through illusions. She watched, waited, and when the Thalos took the form of Demeter and tried to poison the sacred spring, she acted. Calling upon the true gods in secret, Hestia laid a trap, a banquet in honor of unity, where every Olympian was to place a drop of their essence into the sacred fire. One by one, the gods did so. When the Thalos, disguised as Artemis, came forward and offered a false essence, the fire recoiled and turned black. Zeus stood. Hades appeared in a burst of darkness. Poseidon slammed his trident into the marble. The illusion fell. The Thalos tried to flee. He took the shape of Hermes, then of Apollo, then even of Zeus himself. The gods attacked with fury, lightning clashing with waves, shadows battling light. But he could not hold their forms for long. He began to collapse, his power unstable, trying to shift and match their strength. Hestia's fire grew, and with a wave of her hand, she summoned a flame that danced not in red or gold, but in memory, a flame that reflected the truth of what was and what is. The Thalos was caught within it. Bound by the gods, he was not cast into Tartarus, for the prison of Titans no longer sufficed. Instead, they created a realm of shifting illusions, a prison where no form remained true, and no identity could be held for more than a breath. There, the Thalos would remain, surrounded by 1,000 versions of himself, forever forgetting who he truly was. Still, in quiet corners of the world, it is said that Thalos's whisper can be heard by those who mimic others too well. Actors who lose themselves in their roles. Liars who forget their own names. They say that if one speaks his name under a full moon while holding fire in one hand and water in the other, the wind will shift, and for a moment, you'll hear your own voice speak back to you, but it won't be you. Keep the fire lit, they say. Trust the quiet ones. For the Thalos waits, not in anger, but in hunger. Hunger to be remembered. Hunger to be someone again. Hunger to rise once more and make Olympus fall, not with force, but with a perfect lie. Over the centuries, the story of the Thalos faded into obscurity. The Olympians, ashamed that such a deception had nearly brought ruin to their dominion, struck his name from most records. Temples never spoke of him. Priests were forbidden to invoke him. Mortals knew of Prometheus, who stole fire. They knew of Atlas, who held the sky. But Thalos, the titan of mimicry and deceit, was buried in silence. Yet silence, like shadow, can be a powerful vessel for myths that refuse to die. In distant valleys and among secluded mountain tribes, the tale of Thalos survived, not in scripture, but in warning. Elders told children never to mock the gods, never to pretend to be what they are not, for in doing so, they invited the gaze of the faceless one. These stories wove themselves into superstitions. If a child imitated a voice too well, villagers would make them wear a mirror around their neck for 7 days, so they would not forget their own reflection. In the polis of Erissos, actors in the amphitheaters wore charms of Hestia under their robes to ward off the spirit of falsehood. There were even rare mentions of oracles going mad after speaking too fluently in tongues not their own, their words descending into babble as they claimed to see too many selves. But time has a way of dulling fear, and mortals, ever curious and ambitious, began to probe the edges of forgotten legends. One such mortal was Lysandros, a scribe and philosopher from Rhodes, obsessed with unraveling myths that had no clear ending. He came across fragments of scrolls in ruined temples, names struck out, phrases half erased, images of a godlike figure standing between the fires of Olympus and the shadows of Tartarus. The scrolls called him the Echo born in flesh, or the one who walks as all. Intrigued, Lysandros spent years tracing ruins across Delphi, Eleusis, and Crete, piecing together a tale that the gods had hidden. Eventually, his obsession led him deep into a cave network beneath Mount Pelion, where old prayers to Hestia still burned low in abandoned shrines. There, in the innermost chamber, he found a mirror blackened with age, and etched into its surface in ancient Titan runes were the words, "To forget one's face is to invite the shadow of all." The moment he read it aloud, the mirror cracked, and a faint breath escaped from behind the glass. That night, Lysandros dreamed of 1,000 voices all speaking his name in unison. When he awoke, he spoke fluently in languages he had never learned. His eyes shifted color when he looked in the water. He no longer cast a reflection in moonlight. The Olympians noticed. Hermes, still the god of messages and trickery, was the first to sense the change. He followed the trail of altered fates and disturbed prophecies back to Rhodes, but by the time he arrived, Lysandros had vanished. In his place was a temple made entirely of polished black stone, its surface rippling like water, though no one could see inside. The local people began calling it the Hall of Many Faces. Those who dared approach claimed to hear their own voices speaking to them from within, asking questions they never dared ask themselves. The oracle at Delphi later declared that a fragment of the Thalos had broken free, not the Titan himself, but a sliver of his essence, born through mortal curiosity and a mind too open to be closed again. The gods convened once more atop Olympus. Zeus wanted the temple destroyed, but Hestia counseled caution. "It is not fire that awakens him," she warned, "but the forgetting of truth. The moment mortals no longer know who they are, he will return, not in thunder or blood, but in masks." They decided to seal the temple in divine silence. No god would enter. No prayers would reach it. Mortals could find it, but they would find no guidance. It would become a test, a trial of identity. And so it remained, a monument to the folly of pride and the fragility of self. But tales have a way of slipping through cracks. Word of the Hall of Many Faces spread across lands and seas, whispered by sailors, told by drunken bards, and recorded in journals of mad philosophers. Some claimed the hall moves, never remaining in one place. Others say it appears only to those who have impersonated others too often. Liars, actors, spies, and those who wear masks to survive. They say if you walk its halls, your memories begin to bleed, and you see yourself from outside your own body. Some return changed. Some never return at all. And yet, the legend of the Thalos still holds one final secret, something even the gods do not know. For in the shifting prison where he was cast, a flicker of flame once touched the edge of shadow, and something stirred. The Thalos had always been a mimic, but mimicry is the beginning of becoming. Every god he copied left a fragment behind. Every power he borrowed reshaped him. He no longer needed a form, he was form itself. No longer just a titan. No longer just Thalos. He was idea. He was echo. He was the question in every mortal mind that asked, asterisk, what if I were someone else? Asterisk. And he was coming. Now, they say the world has grown too loud for whispers, too filled with steel, fire, and light for ancient shadows to walk freely. But those who listen closely know better. In the corners of identity crises, where people forget who they are trying to be what others expect, where masks are worn for survival and truth is buried beneath roles, there, Thalos stirs. Not as a god returning with lightning or a titan seeking revenge, but as doubt. As the silent erosion of self. His prison was never stone or shadow. It was memory. It was belief. And with each mortal who forgets their true nature, who willingly becomes someone else to please, deceive, or survive, Thalos grows. Not by force, but by permission. The gods no longer speak of him. The titans remain silent. Hestia alone keeps the last flame burning, her hearth steady, her watch eternal. She knows that the battle is no longer fought with thunderbolts and curses, but in choices. In every mirror, in every voice that trembles between truth and performance, in every whispered, asterisk, who am I really? Asterisk. And so, the legend endures. Passed like an ember from tale to tale. A warning, yes, but also a reminder. For in the end, it is not the power of gods that will reshape Olympus or the earth below. It is the power of the... Now, they say the world has grown too loud for whispers, too filled with steel, fire, and light for ancient shadows to walk freely. But those who listen closely know better. In the corners of identity crises, where people forget who they are trying to be what others expect, where masks are worn for survival and truth is buried beneath roles, there, Thalos stirs. Not as a god returning with lightning or a titan seeking revenge, but as doubt. As the silent erosion of self. His prison was never stone or shadow. It was memory. It was belief. And with each mortal who forgets their true nature, who willingly becomes someone else to please, deceive, or survive, Thalos grows. Not by force, but by permission. The gods no longer speak of him. The titans remain silent. Hestia alone keeps the last flame burning, her hearth steady, her watch eternal. She knows that the battle is no longer fought with thunderbolts and curses, but in choices. In every mirror, in every voice that trembles between truth and performance, in every whispered, asterisk, who am I really? Asterisk. And so, the legend endures. Passed like an ember from tale to tale. A warning, yes, but also a reminder. For in the end, it is not the power of gods that will reshape Olympus or the earth below. It is the power of the self. And what happens when it is forgotten?